Overhead, overhead, overhead. I tell people this all the time. It's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep. Work, Apple was working in their mother's garage. Work, only expand, let the business force you to expand for those extra expenses. Keep it as lean and mean, especially in the early years, because overhead is literally what kills most more businesses. They do not have the wherewithal to withstand that cash flow. And the other thing I always tell people, real quick, don't try and be all things to all people. You can't. Nobody is. You'll become nothing to anybody if you do that. As much as you think Coke's the best brand in the world, half the people want Pepsi. Whatever it is, you're only going to get half the market. And you really got to know that and be willing to give up and really focus on what your core identity is. I think that's just really important.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Craig Wolfe. And Craig started out out of high school and went to college and got a degree in English. Didn't know what he wanted to do. Was adrift for a few years doing some sales jobs, I think with some cosmetic companies and other things. Also did a health food store. That was before Whole Foods was cool or had come along. And then did a number of other sales jobs and was a distributor. Decided he wanted to do things on his own. Came across an idea for doing artwork with I think television commercials and other for larger businesses and other things. And then also started off as an offshoot of doing celebrity ducks, and so he'll talk a little bit more about that. And then ended up selling off the agency and focusing on ducks full time. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Craig.
Thank you, Devin. Really happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So excited to have you on. And then I just gave a much condensed version to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack a bit? So tell us a little bit about how your journey got started coming out of high school and getting your English degree.
Oh, sure. When I graduated high school, my mother always wanted to be like you. And I didn't have the skill sets, and I knew it early on. I wasn't going to be the lawyer who they wanted, but I basically did not know what I was going to do. So I did take jobs, as you mentioned, mainly sales, cosmetic company. And my first job was really, as I remember now, working as a retail credit card collection clerk at Crocker Bank, about the farthest spectrum from what I'm doing today. But I just drifted, doing sales jobs, making money, didn't know what I wanted to do. One day,
So
standing, yeah,
just
go ahead.
one or diving into that just a little bit and maybe rewinding. So
Sure.
you went in, or just to go back to the college time frame, just to set the stage. I think you did, while you didn't go get a law degree, and I understand, and I wouldn't blame anybody for not wanting to go through that painful process. But you went and got an English degree. Is that right?
I did. And I did find that knowing how to write and communicate was basically one of the best things I could have learned in
Hmm.
terms of doing business.
So now definitely makes sense. I think that be able to write and articulate yourself and be able to convey a lot of
Absolutely.
information definitely is a great skill set across a lot of different industries. So now you're coming out of college and you mentioned a little bit, but English degrees, at least in my experience, and correct me where I'm wrong, they don't have they don't have necessarily a well-defined career path of, hey, here's a job that you go and apply with, unless you're going to become a professor or you're going to go teach a school. But otherwise, you have to figure out kind of how you're going to utilize that within your career. So how did you where did you start with that, or how did you
Well, in
figure
my
out what you were going to do?
well, my degree, as I said, really had nothing to do with anything I did afterwards, except for the fact of the skill sets I learned, as you mentioned, how to communicate and how to write. Those really went far. So whatever path I got in, whatever job, whatever company I worked for, having communication skills that I learned as an English major were invaluable, even though practically, like I said, unless I want to become a professor, it really wasn't going to translate to a specific job.
Hmm. So with that in mind, and as you're coming out of school, have, probably as most people do, student loans or even life's demands and things to pay for and everything else to do. So you mentioned a little bit, but what was that first job as you were trying to figure things out? Where did you start?
It was unbelievable. Retail credit card collection. Just imagine a giant building with all these people, and you're just going through files and files, and you're providing the information that the credit card people would call, and you're just going through the files and papers providing to them so they can make the calls to collect debts for a major bank in San Francisco. About the farthest thing in my life that I ever would have imagined myself doing, but it paid well and it was a job, and that was the beginning of doing something.
Hmm. No, but hey, start somewhere. You get some experience. You get, or you start to pay down debts. Or give yourself some breathing room, and you figure that out. So, started out at the credit card business, and how long did you stay there for?
I'd probably say I was a good maybe 8 months. That was probably all it was. And then at a certain point I left it. And believe it or not, I entered childcare. I was working in a childcare facility, taking care of young children during the day. So that was before running the health food store and the sales job. So you see, it's just like little things, just like taking time till I really knew what it is I was going to do. I did not have any idea, Devin, what I was going to do, quite frankly.
No, and I think everybody takes that path. It's interesting. You have a lot of different things. You come out of school, you got a degree, and still does just because you have a degree doesn't mean you know what you want to do when you grow up or for the
That's
rest of your
right.
life. And definitely in that same boat. And I'll probably be in that same boat until I finally retire and I'm not working anymore,
And
which who
figure
knows
out
when
what you
that will
want
be.
to do.
But you see, so you went to you started out doing a few sales jobs. So you did you kind of went to the
Yeah.
credit cards. You did in the next job. I think you got into health food
Yeah, a
business
health
for a
food
period
store
of
was
time.
very successful. Mill Valley, California. Like I say, before Whole Foods came in, it did fantastic. I mean, it was a great business. Two partners, figured it out. It did great, but I walked out on that because I realized that wasn't my destiny either. So I left that one behind.
And how long, or because I mean,
Probably a
Whole
year.
Foods obviously did well. It was a good business industry, and sounds like you were being successful. So, how did you
Yeah,
come to the realization that hey, while this is maybe a good industry, it's not the one for me, and I'm going to go somewhere else?
yeah,
how long were
yeah.
you in it, and how did you kind of figure that
Probably
out?
about a year, and I told my partner, "You can have it." And I just walked out. Literally, Devin. Young, idealistic. I didn't ask for money. I helped start. I said, "You can take it. I'm out of here." Um, Literally, just felt that wasn't my path, and it wasn't even about the money. I go, this wasn't where I was supposed to end up. I just intuitively knew that.
Hmm. So now you come to that realization, say, okay, this isn't it. This isn't where I'm supposed to be. Where did you go from there?
Well, one day I'm walking down the street and I pass Macy's window, and they have all these Coca-Cola vending machines and picnic baskets and old Coke bottles with the shape of the cocoa party and the glass ones, not the can, the real thing. And I looked at it. It was just when the Coke Polar Bear commercials were coming out. And I don't want to get religious here, but it was like an epiphany. I looked at it and I said, I always loved Disney animation art. And at one point, I forgot to mention, I was actually buying and selling Disney animation drawings, the
Hmm.
original drawings from the 1930s that they used to make the original cartoons. I loved the passion in that Disney animation. I loved it, the early stuff. But when I saw those Coke things, I said, why does Coca-Cola not market their artwork the way Disney does with the Coke polar bears and the whole 9 yards? And I bet there's a million people who would love the picture on their wall from the commercial, the Coke polar. Called Coke. It took me a year to convince them of what I wanted to do. A year, literally a year. At the
Hmm.
end of the year, they let me do it. And long story short, it became one of Coca-Cola's top selling art pieces. I did Coca-Cola polar bears, all different scenes from the commercial. I started working with the actual animation studio who was making the commercials, so they would actually give me the artwork. And I said, well, I can do this with Coca-Cola. Why not Anheuser-Busch? Why not the M&Ms, the Hershey? I mean, it was just like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and it's just boom, 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 till eventually we were the largest publisher of artwork from television commercials in the country,
Well,
just from
so
that
no,
one little thing, right? Who
no,
knew?
I think it's an awesome idea and it makes sense. And I think that, a lot of these, you have to go with the bigger brands, right? The ones that everybody knows and they have kind of a cooler
Built-in
cliche or,
collectible
you know,
base. Yeah.
yep. And people, you get people that are loyal following and they like the artwork and it's kind of fun. And if whether it's for businesses or man caves or houses or decorations or garages or anywhere, number of places, I definitely get it. So you did that, and you did that or once you kind of stumbled on that, took you a year to get
No,
into
it
it.
was my business. And then, I was always a big fan of clay animation. I grew up watching Gumby, probably before your time. And
I do know who Gumby. It is a bit before my time, but I do at least know who Gumby is. So.
Eventually I tracked down the creator of Gumby, Art Clokey. And he and I became very good friends, and his wife and my wife and his wife, and we always hang out together and became very close. And I would market all the artwork from his films and all the Gumby characters and from the sets and props and everything. And we became very close. And then I did the same thing with the California Raisins because I loved clay animation. I thought they were really cool. So I moved up to Portland where the studio was and marketed all the California Raisin stuff. So I'm basically taking that Disney concept of something I feel, this is where I really feel something passionate about, the animation art and the characters. Now we're not at Crocker Bank anymore. We're not doing the health foods. This I could relate to. So now this animation thing, I'm creating these things for all these companies and it's taken off, and I was doing pretty good with it. And that was my life. I thought that's all I'd be doing. Never saw ducks, in the equation at all.
So now, no, that's a great segue. So, I mean, so you're doing that, being successful. Sounds like you found a good niche, and sounds like it was going well for you. Now, how did you get in? Now, how did you shift gears from that, which sounds like a good business, to going into ducks?
Right. Well, it's like that John Lennon quote: "Life's what happens when you're busy making other plans." Then one day at a party, a friend who got very drunk, very honestly, had this idea about making rubber ducks that look like celebrities. Now, I know 99% of the people would go, that's not going to work. Right. And, but I thought I was intrigued by it. I actually, in my mind, even though most people wouldn't probably see it working, some weird hybrid, I could see it that maybe this could work. So I called King Features, who do Betty Boop, own the rights. I said, I have this idea. I still remember the conversation because I kid her about it to this day. I want to make a rubber duck that looks like Betty Boop. And I could tell she's trying to find the most polite way to get me off the phone. All right, you make your little Betty Boop rubber duck, get back to us, we'll talk, and then that was the end of it. She'll never hear from me again. But, I had all the money from the animation. I somehow got someone in China to make one and sculpt one and this and that. And I finally got it to her. And one day I come in means I upstairs to downstairs, because I just work out of the home. And there's a message there from Ita, and it says, "We got your little Betty Boop rubber duck. It's really cute. Let's talk." And that was the very beginning. It's only one duck now, but that was when we actually began to make rubber ducks of celebrities. Not where we really took off, but where we actually go, okay, somebody says this thing is a viable business. Let's run with it on the side. It's not going to be our main business, of course. It's a little fun, as Mr. Wonderful says on Shark Tank, a little hobby. But as you know, what it became, who knew?
No, and a lot of times it's interesting that the businesses, where they come from and how they evolve and what direction they take is always a bit of a mind of their own. So now you said, started out in, paraphrasing, side hustle, or kind of started off as an offshoot, and who would think ducks would be a full-time business or would have enough demand to, warrant or starting a business around it. So, walk us through that evolution as far as you're running, kind of running the full-time business, doing this on the side, and how did that evolve?
Yes, that's a great story. Well, I'm a guy who works at home, does 90% of the stuff myself, right? I mean, we may be the largest publishing company in the country, or from television, maybe the largest custom duck manufacturer in the world. I'm sitting at home, right? So I'm sending out all little press releases by myself, mailing them out. No one's really responding. And then one day I get a phone call from the Atlantic City Press. And they go, "We got your little press release about your rubber ducks." By now, I've expanded the lineup by maybe 12 of them. Babe Ruth, Queen Elizabeth, the Three Stooges, And she goes, "Why should we do a story about you?" This is my moment, Devin. I go, "Well, I'm from Jersey, and I used to go to Atlantic City all the time." She goes, "Good enough." That's the tie-in. That weekend, serendipity, it ran a story about Celebriducks in the Atlantic City Press. And who reads it but the vice president of the Philadelphia 76ers?
Hmm.
And they call us, they say, we're always looking for cutting edge promotions. Can you do our superstar Allen Iverson, a duck of him? I mean, with all the tattoos on his arms, the cornrows, the earring, exactly like that. I go, absolutely, we can do that. I I wasn't sure we could do that, but I felt maybe we could. Anyway, they flew out. I met with them in San Francisco. I lived in Marin and had a great meeting. I still kid Dave to this day as a patron saint of Celebriducks. That was one of their top promotions. When that duck came out, I mean, they had Bow Wow in the promotion, and they used Gilligan from Gilligan's Island in the commercials, and it sold out the stadium, huge hit. And all of a sudden, the Yankees, the Cubs, Gorton Seafood, everyone was calling us to do promotions of these rubber ducks. And the long story short, it was growing so big, I sold off the animation part and literally became all ducks.
Hmm. No, that's
Didn't see that
awesome.
one coming, right?
Would
I
have
mean, who
never
would?
thought and make sense. And I think they sound cool. And I'm like, oh, that'd be a good promotional item. It's something different. But if nothing else, I would go home and my kids would love them after I get them, and they would play with them, and they would be around the
Yeah.
tub, and or I'd have them around the office. So I think that's awesome. So now, so you made the leap full time over to the Celebriducks, and
Yeah.
they're doing that now. How long have you guys been in business? How's it been going? And where are
Well,
things headed?
we've been doing this for about 25 years. And we have to understand we have people now because we're kind of considered the top custom duck manufacturer in the world. So we came from Conan O'Brien, like when he moved from the Tonight Show to the Turner Network, they wanted a couple thousand Conan O'Brien ducks to give out. We never missed a deadline. He opened up 2,000 of them sitting on his doorstep. And then the Houston Rockets wanted endless ones. Even one guy, Moochie Norris, with a shower cap. There was nothing we couldn't do, and we realized how we'll beat anyone trying to knock us off. China will always try and make things cheaper. We'll go the opposite direction. We'll make them so complex and spend more money on them that no one's going to spend the money to do our level of quality and detail. And no one ever has. So we just kept expanding, and people, Barry Manilow won first tour. I mean, people just every companies, people, I can go on, and not to mention all the promotions, wants to create ducks for their company, for their logos, for their corporation. And we were doing it for some of the top companies and celebrities in the world, which that's what we do now. I mean, nonstop. And it just blew up, Devin, just one of those quirky little ideas that you never really know.
No, that's awesome. That sounds like you're great. So now just as a follow-up question, so where do you see Celebriducks headed? Is it continuing to expand and go more directions? Are you going to expand out beyond ducks? Or are you going to just stay in your lane and continue to grow the business? Or kind of where do you see the next 6 to 12 months going for you guys?
Well, the interesting thing is, we suddenly hit another amazing growth spurt. We were doing licensing and all, and then all of a sudden, for Marilyn Monroe's estate, Elvis's estate, making ducks for all these different people, we had licenses. But then we had the idea of playing around with parody, and we have now become like the Weird Al Yankovic of rubber ducks. So about maybe 8 years ago, we totally switched our model and we became parody with all these funny lines. So we have a duck that it might remind you of the Beatles that give geese a chance, but you know who it is. One that maybe Ziggy Starduck, Pond Control to Mallard Tom, uh, the Wing of Fire, a toy named Sue. And all these ducks, instead of they became more like ducks that gave you the feeling of a character dressed up. And then the company just exploded. I mean, overnight. I mean, you can see all the ones we're doing now on our website, new ones from ZZ Flock to Beak Loaf, Bath Out of Hell. I mean, they're just endless. Taylor, Splash It Off, Ducky Style. I mean, it's just gone mad. And our biggest problem right now is we cannot keep up. Our factory is just overloaded with work. And so that comes that critical period in any business where do you leave the people who brought you to the dance, or do you just try and find a way to work with them? And we're loyal to a fault. So we keep trying to work with the people we've been working with for 25 years. But it is a critical moment because we've never had growth like this. And I'm getting on in years, and I
Mm.
was thinking more about retiring, but now it's going the opposite direction. So I don't know, maybe someday someone will make an offer we can't refuse, which is another one of our great ducks, the Godfeather.
There you go. No, I love it, and I think I like the names. I like the duck names too. That one
That
catches my
makes it,
fancy.
those
So
names.
I'll
Yeah.
have to pick that one up or when I go to your website next. But no, that's awesome. Sounds like a fun direction. And hey, if you love what you're doing, why retire? You keep going,
I
and
know
then
my
when you're
wife and
done,
I
and
have
then
that's what you say, who cares about that? We have so much fun with it. We just sit around, eat chocolate, drink a little coffee, coming up with these funny names, and then you just see how much people enjoy them. So, it's a way we just stay young together. We
absolutely.
do it together. We play together. My wife comes up with the best ideas. She said, a customer asked me the other day, so who comes up with these ideas? I said, my wife, 98%, and me, 2%. I told her that. She corrected me. She said, it's more like you're like more like 1%. So, and it's probably
Hey,
true.
as long as it works and the team works, it makes sense. Keep doing it. So that's awesome. Well,
So
cool. Well,
that's us.
now as we've reached the present day of the journey and even looking a bit into the future, it's a great time to transition over to the two questions I always ask at the end of each
Yeah.
episode. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn
That's
from it?
easy. That's easy. And it turned out quite a story. A lady came to us to create ducks for the World Cup for FIFA. And she came actually invited over to my house. Very nice. I trusted her, and she asked me, "Can I, when I'm in China, because I'm doing other projects, visit your factory?" At the time, as it was time we were using a different factory for some production. Probably the biggest mistake I ever made. She totally turned that particular factory against us. I mean, she just made up all these stories about us that were totally untrue. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden, she said she had paid a deposit. She wasn't going to pay for the rest of the shipment unless I released it in customs. I knew she would never pay the rest of it. So I felt totally trapped. And I remember talking to my wife about this. I said, I don't know what to do. I feel trapped. She goes, "You're never trapped. There's always a decision in business you can make ethically and morally, and you never have to feel trapped." And I said, "You're right." I said, "You know what? I'm not releasing it. I'm keeping her 15,000 and we're done."
Hmm.
And I then found the factory that we ended up working with long term. It couldn't have worked out better, Devin. It was like divine providence. And I always say this, your mind affects your reality. So if you really in business are going to roadblocks, and to the degree you really believe the solidity of them and get really scared by them, your business will follow. But the degree you really realize that you always have choices and they're out there, your business has a chance of really flourishing. And it's not
No,
just mumbo jumbo. I'm not into the new age. That's just a fact to me.
no, I think that is definitely makes sense. That's a fun mistake to learn, and it's kind of one
Horrible
where
mistake, but it turned out great.
but it turns out great. And sometimes it's interesting how the mistakes put you in a new direction or give you a new view, and it ends up
Yeah,
being, a blessing, so in the size or in the sky, so to
definitely.
speak. Because without that, you would have never gone in the direction you did. So it sounds like a
Absolutely.
great mistake to make and to learn from.
That's right.
Second question now that I always ask is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I'm going to give you one. It's really a two. I thought this over because they're so almost equal to me. Overhead, overhead, overhead. I tell people this all the time. It's not how much money you make, it's how much you keep. Work, Apple was working in their mother's garage. Work, only expand, let the business force you to expand for those extra expenses. Keep it as lean and mean, especially in the early years, because overhead is literally what kills most more businesses. They do not have the wherewithal to withstand that cash flow. And the other thing I always tell people, real quick, don't try and be all things to all people. You can't. Nobody is. You'll become nothing to anybody if you do that. As much as you think Coke's the best brand in the world, half the people want Pepsi. Whatever it is, you're only going to get half the market. And you really got to know that and be willing to give up and really focus on what your core identity is. I think that's just really important.
No, I think that's absolutely a great takeaway and a great piece of advice. So definitely worth putting in the arsenal. So Awesome. Well, with that, as we wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
The phone number's right on the homepage of celebriducks.com, CELEBRIDUCKS. It's right there. They can just call anytime. I actually pick up the phone. I'll speak to anybody. It's hard to believe. People can't believe it, but I do. And they can write the info at celebriducks.com. We'll respond to every email from everybody, every phone call, every email. The old way they used to do it. Remember them before voicemail and all that, when you can get to a live person? That's how we do it. Old
Hey, I
school.
love it. And I'm right there with you. And, I don't know that everybody that always calls me always gets a live person, but I always make sure that they eventually talk with the live person as soon
Yeah.
as possible, rather than going through that phone tree that everybody hates and you have to dial 20 numbers only to get to the wrong person. So I think that's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you other listeners that are out there, you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Craig, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it. I'll be talking to you shortly with, I told you about that, this new project we're working on for this end of the fall.
Absolutely.